All right. Welcome everyone to the Flux Dev Meeting. Today is the 8th of December. I'm having a quick look at the agenda. Do we have any action items from last time? Oh, we do. Modify governance and point to RFC process from there. I'm not sure if this has happened, but I'll add a comment for myself to check. Stefan will update the roadmap with links to the multi-tenancy proposal. I think this has happened. I can check as well. And it's got to follow up early next year. Yeah, I can follow up with Scott later on just to see what was happened there. Good. So that's last meeting. Do we have anyone new on the call who quickly wants to introduce themselves, maybe say a couple of words?
Yes, I'll probably introduce myself. I'm Paul Gomez, and I joined WeaveWorks recently, so I'll be helping to contribute on the Flux project.
Hurrah!
Welcome. Good to have you.
I don't know if I may. So I will introduce myself. I'm Grégoire. I use Flux, and I got some. I'd like some stuff done in Flux, so I'm here to listen, to understand a little bit how it works, and hopefully be able to develop something.
Cool. This is the right place to come if you want to kind of discuss things in person, like feature requests or what you've already done and submitted. So yeah, good idea to come here. Yeah, I'm guessing you're in EU, Grégoire.
Yes, in France, yes.
Okay. Cool.
Brilliant. Okay, yeah, first on the agenda, we have a roundup of what's been happening on the way to GA. Does anyone have anything they would like to report?
I don't think anything's changed. Sunny, is it worth talking about the cherry picking you've done?
We didn't discuss in detail about it last time, but we hinted that the refactoring was again going on. This week, like, we are hoping to finish the source controller refactoring and do a release candidate. So if everything goes well, on Friday we may have a release candidate. And the image reflector PR is ready. Once it's reviewed, again we can do a release candidate. I think we don't want to do a stable release with all these refactors just before holidays. So maybe just do release candidates, and next year we can do stable release.
Cool. Thank you. I don't have anything to report specifically on the image automation stuff. That's, in fact, I think Sunny's doing most of the work there at present. So, yeah. And Hida is not here to talk about the other bits.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for the update. Next up, we have the audit follow-up. So if you have a look at the link there, it heads to the project board, and we made, as far as I know, I haven't checked it too closely lately, but I think a few PRs have made their way over. So Hidde's feedback the last time was because like one chunk of the work, which is sort of in progress bracket, that's the fuzzer PRs, and we just need more time and more together time on this probably to land them. But what we might want to advertise maybe a bit more is that people that help out with the documentation pieces. So for example, how to install and test the controllers. Like this is definitely something like new contributors could also help out with, that they just, try out the instructions if they don't work, help fix them. So that would be easy targets. And yeah, so Scott made also some progress on some of the security docs pieces. It will obviously take a bit longer to get like, architectural overview, that kind of thing landed. But apart from that, like all of the actual, or most of all the code changes that were requested have already happened. So this is like a really great outcome after, 1 or 2 months after the audit has happened. So that's yeah, something we should celebrate.
Definitely. I've been helping Stefan with the RFC 0001, which is supposed to kind of provide the basis on which other RFCs can be written. And the more I look at it, the more I realize that there's quite a lot of security related documentation just completely missing. So for example, Flux kind of does some impersonation for some things and not others, and that is only documented in code. And that sort of thing should be in our documentation, if not front and center, then definitely written out explicitly. So I think there's quite a lot of work to do there. That was one of the recommendations, explicit recommendations from the auditors, was to have exactly like write all the security stuff in one place. Like, here are the things you need, here's how it works. This is what it needs. This is what's set up if you install it, and that sort of stuff. These are things you need to pay attention to, potential vulnerabilities, caveats, and we just don't have that. So I don't know if that's what Scott's aiming for, but it's definitely needed.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Do we have an issue tracking some of that? Because I have some ideas as well of things that would be good for us to kind of break down, or even put things to do around that subject. So if we have an issue already tracking that, I'll definitely be keen to contribute on that.
Super, yeah.
Cool.
So I added
add security doc. Yeah.
Yeah, I added an issue label for these things. So far, Scott set up like a security landing page within the documentation, and collected notes after talking to a few of you. So there are issues with notes, but some of this needs to, somebody needs to sit down and spend some solid time on this. Yeah, all help will be very much appreciated. Like, do you think you could add a note on one of the issues or somewhere else about the impersonation bits, or maybe so we note it down somewhere? Michael?
Yeah, let me find a good place. It might involve a new.
Would be fantastic, just so we don't forget it.
Documenting the permission system. Well, this got closed though. I'm not sure why this was closed.
Yeah, please.
Oh, close this in 641. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, this is me just clicking through issues now. Please.
Yeah.
I'll have a look at this and see if there's a good place if it's not covered.
Super. thank you.
Yeah, just continue on.
All right. Yeah, I'll type up the rest of this later. Yeah. Are there any questions or anything else about the audit? Or earlier, I didn't ask if there were questions about the GA section earlier. If not, I guess we can move on. I had one agenda item. It's about the governance automation. So the backstory to this is we have, like, as you all know, we have a bunch of Flux repositories. They all have a maintainers file. We had people who moved on. We had people who changed their email addresses. We had all kinds of other changes. And sometimes it was a bit hard for me, for example, to reach out to the CNCF and say, like, okay, we need all these maintainers added. Here are the email addresses, or sometimes we just miss to update the maintainers files. Sometimes I needed, for example, for us to go for graduation, I needed to have an overview, like we have this many maintainers in total. We have, so many working for Weaveworks and for other organizations, all the rest of it. So I thought it would make sense to just have a bunch of YAML somewhere that says like who's maintaining what and who's like an alumni. And then, so my thinking was that we turn the maintainers files basically just into text files that provide a contact, like who's on the hook, but maintain all the rest in YAML basically. Yeah, so if you head to that issue in Flagger, you can sort of see a little bit of a back and forth around the process, or who should have access to which repositories, if this should live in the Flux CD community repository, which is where for me, it seemed an obvious place to stick the YAML there. I don't have like very strong opinions on this, and I'm not hell-bent on this is the way it has to be implemented, but it's just where I started. I just wanted to make my life a bit easier and bring a little bit of automation. I don't know if any of you have.
Well, I have.
Oh yeah, please.
I have reviewed the automation you've made in place, and I find it kind of nice. And I think if you have access to the community repo in order to update the list of maintainers, you can go with that. I think Stefan said that something that you have to keep in mind, that the maintainers are supposed to be able to maintain what is on the repositories. So even though it's not in the repository, you should have access to it. I think you can go for it. My opinion.
Yeah, okay, so that would be like a follow-up to this discussion that we would, like, I mean, if there's no big objections, that everybody gets access to the community repository, which in my mind makes sense. And then I think another point Stefan made was sort of how, somebody, let's say somebody applies for, I want to be maintainer for a given repository, that the current maintainers of that repository review the request. I don't know if we need automation around this, or if we want to make this easier, or if it's too much process anyway. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts or feelings on this?
So as I understand it, the line of reasoning is that the process is centralized in the community repo rather than distributed. That's what it ends up being. And the objection is that it should be distributed, decentralized. And then the follow-up to that is that, okay, well, let's give people access, all the people that would otherwise have access, decentralized access to the centralized thing, which seems like the tail wagging the dog slightly, to use a weird idiom.
So the other half of the problem then would be that if we keep the locus of control inside each repo and try to parse the maintainer's file, then that's a process that can fail. I mean,
Okay, make it
it's
not fail.
necessarily a deal breaker, but it's just.
Yeah, I mean, it can fail, but is it a disaster if it doesn't work and you have to go fix it up from time to time? We can standardize how the maintainers files work. I don't think that's a problem, is it? I mean, I do get the inclination to try and make it centralized, but it sort of seems to cause more problems. And the community repo should not really have a privileged position, if you like. It's just another repo with its own maintainers, and it sort of happens to have some, like I think the governance is in that one. So there's a sense in which it sort of already is elevated slightly, I guess. But it's sort of a weird place to, well, is it a weird place? It's sort of weird to say, right here, to pick any of the repos and say, well, we're going to drive automation for everything else from here.
I mean, right now we're just talking about like a centralized address book, if you like, and we wouldn't do like, we wouldn't drive ACLs for anything from there. It would really be just, here's how we look up who does what. And for example, I was drawing inspiration from the Kubernetes project because they have /org, which is like their repository where everything is centrally defined. And I thought that would be a good way to go about this.
I see.
And I was really treating the maintainers file just as like, here's how you get in touch with the people responsible for this, like a text file that gives you instructions, and not as we give ACLs off. It is really just a lookup of names and addresses in my mind.
Yeah, if it doesn't do the ACLs, is there a chance that it would get out of sync with permissions? I mean, there's already that chance because the file in each repo is just a file anyway, isn't it? So
yeah.
Not like that drives the ACLs. Yeah, okay. I guess the uncomfortable bit is that now everyone has to sort of drive that workflow through the community repo. But
which is where we did is it also the place where we did the maintainer applications or the maintainer requests?
Maintainer or just contributor? Contributor.
Oh, or yeah.
I mean, maybe people don't have to have permissions to the community repo, and because you can always put in a PR from your own fork that changes something about who, you being a maintainer, and then other people can come in and approve it, and then someone can check, oh yeah, they are the maintainers. I mean, that doesn't really change. That only changes the location, not what permissions people have to have.
Yeah. Although yeah, I wouldn't mind if if you have like a repository that has two maintainers and they also have access to community and they can just review the request, approve it, and then the automation takes over. I think that would be ideal.
Yeah.
Well, sorry.
Yeah. It's the giving people permissions that they wouldn't otherwise have, just so that the workflow works, that kind of makes me a bit itchy. But if we don't need to do that, then great. If we do need to do it and there's no other way, then fine.
Paulo, you were going to say?
Yeah, just one point. So one pattern that I see a lot on the Kubernetes about this on the SIGs is that instead of updating that file automatically, you actually just have like a verify that would actually ensure that that was up to date. Because then what will happen is like you'll just force every time that a maintainer is added on another file, someone else has to also commit that to the community one and get that up to date. But yeah, that was the only point that I wanted to make.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll go back to the drawing board about this. Yeah, I didn't feel very strongly one way or another. I just wanted one way to automate some of this.
Daniel, I haven't actually looked at the code of the automation itself. I just followed the conversation you had with Stefan. So
yeah,
perhaps I should inform myself better, come back with a more informed opinion.
Yeah, I'll think about it some more. I'll be back. Good. All right. Yeah, Michael and Grégoire, I think you wanted to talk about the image reflector. No, it's yours.
Me? Oh.
The two of you. Yeah.
Yeah, I put an addendum on there for you.
Okay. So
do you want to just talk about the PR that you put in, and then the broader kind of need for preview environments, perhaps?
Okay, perhaps I will I will explain what I try to do with that. And in fact, my first objective was not to create preview environment, but it was more like to get additional properties to be able to some insight on what's deployed correctly or not. And my idea was first to work on the notification part with the case status, for instance. I saw that it's on your dashboard, on your roadmap, sorry. And to be clear, my idea was to be able to push back to GitHub as this deployment has been done. Is a success or it's failed. So using a deployment thing. Doing that, I needed some additional data. For instance, SHA-1 from the commit and pushing in production. To do that, there's a few ways, and the easiest is to set it on the tags. So I check how to extract this from the tag. I saw that I have to update the image reflector. And doing that, I was like, oh, it's easy. If I want to do a preview environment, it's easy. I can put a map of attributes on the automation part. I can duplicate Kubernetes object, and it's done. So it's why I've done those pull requests. But initially, my goal was really not this one.
Got it. So there's two parts. There's the first one, which is being able to get different bits of the image name out.
Yeah.
And then the second part was sort of opportunistic, because you thought, oh, I could expand this.
Yes.
And yeah, yes. Okay. So actually, I think that first bit has been requested by someone else as well. So, so one thing you could do is adapt the PR or do a PR with just that first bit, and I think that would be less controversial.
Yes. Yeah.
And then
I think I will do that. The
cool.
other part,
and then I see
yes, yeah. Clearly the other part, even doing it, I know that on some use case it will be perfect, it will work. On some other case, it will be perhaps not it will not cover everything. And unfortunately, on this part, I'm not sure something will be easy to do. For instance, on the discussion, I saw that somebody speak about a preview controller. But if you do that, then you have your GitHub that need to call the preview controller. Preview controller need to push back a new object to GitHub, then go back to the cluster. It seems not really easy to manage.
Yeah,
so,
the preview environments are simple in the really trivial cases, but really difficult thereafter for everything else. Like, for instance, if you're using a database, do you want to use, the database that you're using for your other systems?
Yeah, I wrote
do you
on
want
the
to duplicate
discussion.
it? Or,
So this morning I take some time to write a little bit what I think about.
Thank you.
But in fact, writing this, I was like, but why do I do that? In fact, I should perhaps create a GitHub action to do that correctly, and that's all. It's perhaps not a Flux thing. I'm more and more like in this mind, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a completely reasonable way to do it, because I think like doing it by observing the images come through is indirect, and it's only going to work if it's only images that matter. But that is almost never the case. Yeah, so I think we ended up sort of agreeing on that. And so you want to drive it from outside, however you do that. Yeah. Cool. All right. So that sounds like a good way forward then, is if you put in a PR for the attributes, extra attributes bit, or just reduce the one you have. And then you've already engaged with the conversation about preview environments and how to do those, which is not going fast, but we're getting sort of new ideas reasonably consistently. So, it's going somewhere, hopefully.
Yeah, so I think I will check how to do it with, in my organization, we use GitHub. So I think I will try to do something correct with the GitHub action. If there's something we can share, we'll share.
Brilliant.
I will check. On the attribute part, I got some question because, to extract attributes, I think I can update what I did. It will be quite simple. But now there is also the automation part to update the deployment or the Kubernetes object. Yeah. And today the setters policy is a little bit, let's say, complex because it uses a single. In fact, you have to put a JSON with only one key, one value. If you want to use the library you're using, I don't remember which one, KYAML, I think. Yeah, KYAML. Yeah.
KYAML, yeah.
And my question was, should I rewrite this part like I did on my on the automation controller? I rewrite, or should I try to stick with the library you use? But I'm not sure it will be.
I think you'll find it difficult to have the same behavior if you rewrite it. KYAML does things like preserve comments and.
Yeah, well, in fact, I use.
It's not KYAML, but it's the underlying library.
Yeah, I use KYAML, but the issue is with like if I want to do template, it's not possible. If I want today, for instance, you have to put a semicolon name, semicolon tag after the policy to have perhaps having something like I got an attribute name attribute with the attribute name may be simpler, but
yeah, I think maybe try and think of a design, and then we can talk about the design before diving into code. Does that seem reasonable? So you could just make a discussion or an issue for the automation part of it, saying, or if you don't have a design in mind, then saying the image reflector can present arbitrary attributes. How will they get represented or used in the automation? And then we can discuss that there.
You mean
That's at
on
least some way to start.
On a discussion on a Flux repository?
Yeah, there, or just in an issue in the image automation.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
That might be a better place. Actually.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
Or I can't remember what another person was talking about, extracting different bits of the image as well, and I wasn't sure what their use case was. I forget.
Yeah, it just I wanted to extract. I saw the issue, so it was like, yeah, I got the same.
Yeah, cool. You may be able to just add to that one, some comments to that one.
And after there is the notification part. I'm not sure what your vision about that. I saw you were thinking of using key status. I think no key. I don't know, key event. No, I don't remember which one. Key status, yes. I guess the idea is not to. You have the vision to notify if something goes wrong during the deployment in the future.
Are you talking about notifications now?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, are you talking about notifications like
yes.
in Slack and whatever? Yeah.
Yes.
And what was the question?
Because I saw today you have notification. Okay, it's done, but you don't know if it's done correctly or not.
Got it. Right.
So really I saw there.
Yes, there's a discussion about being more explicit about when it failed and why. Yeah.
And is there a discussion about that somewhere, or did I miss it?
There's sort of an ongoing discussion about notifications and versus events anyway. So it is, I think that is distributed, that is kind of smeared out across a number of issues or PRs at present.
Okay, so I'll try to.
Yeah, I mean, have a look, see if you can find an issue that is about exactly notifying on failure. I think the discussion at present is more about not sending notifications when nothing has happened, which is a different thing.
If nothing goes.
Yeah, at present, I think it sends an event whether or not it actually changed something, and you don't. You don't want notification of nothing happening, right? So you might want the event of that, but you don't want the post in Slack saying, "Hey, nothing happened." But you might want, "Hey, I tried this and it failed." So yes, it's all related.
Yeah, or I deploy something and the post is not starting. It's more like this use case I have in mind.
Okay.
It's a little bit, I don't know, because if we get, okay, well, I need to learn a little bit on this one.
Okay.
And I don't know if I can discuss other topic if your meeting is over or.
Are there more agenda, Daniel? I think this was the last one. Well, we've dropped off the end, so if we've got more time, yes, we probably can.
Yeah, because in fact, somebody yesterday showed me something, and I was like, "Hey, it can be done with Flux also." it would be like a sleep controller, in which you can say, I want to put a 0 replica during the night and go back to the number of replica you had during the day.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah. So like have downtime effectively, scheduled downtime for things.
Yes. For staging environment, it will be more like stop it during the night, during the weekend, and so on. And somebody showed me how it did. I was like, yeah, really nice. What he did is also create an endpoint on this controller, so that if you put something into sleep, endpoint on this application will be redirected to the sleeping controller. Sleeping controller receiving an event knows that it needs to wake the application. So wake it up, modifies the routing, and yeah. So you also can wake up an application even if it's into sleep. It's something.
It's one of those kind of use cases that really stretches the the model.
In fact, it's like, yeah, I want to put in sleep all my staging from 8 o'clock to 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. But during the night, you have an issue, you have to test something. So you can access. It will override it, yeah. It will just display you waiting to this application to wake up. Once it wake up, go up. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds a bit like the horizontal pod autoscaler, but instead of scaling, it's running a schedule.
You can scale it to 0, yes.
Yeah.
It's possible, yes.
There was a similar project from Deus Labs called Osiris, but I checked on the repo and it's been archived now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's also something where it's not really obvious how it interacts with GitOps. Like, do you want to record? What do you want to record in Git? The schedule, or the number of replicas, or the state of it, or you know what I mean? It's not obvious.
In fact, I saw it like a Flagger. You have your one version on the Git repository, but it's not what is active on your cluster. You have something else on your cluster that's active.
Yeah, so right. The template and then the actual thing which you're manipulating. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting use case.
I added one more thing to the bottom of the agenda. There's a new repository for folks to be aware of. If you're interested in Flux UI things, I lost my document here. VS Code GitOps tools repository that was made public yesterday. Its current state is, if you want to try it out, you have to compile it. So it's not formally released, but maybe we'll hear something about that soon.
And what is it, Kingdon?
It's the VS Code extension for, it's a user interface for Flux. So it gives you in the sidebar a list of Flux resources and a green or red icon of their current state and lots of UI niceties. You can right click on them and reconcile or suspend and resume. The general standard Flux UI feature set, so it doesn't do much outside of that, but within the first 60 seconds of running it, I found something wrong on my cluster that I hadn't noticed for a couple of days. So I think that's the short story of why people come looking for a UI in general, because it makes it really easy to see something wrong. In my case, it was a Helm release that I was paying attention to sources and customizations, but not Helm releases. So I had a Helm release that was in install retries exhausted. And it showed me right away.
So it's a Flux plugin for VS Code.
Yep.
Yeah. And this is from Weaveworks, isn't it?
It is.
I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So worth, if you like VS Code, then this, or even if you don't like VS Code, but like the idea of an IDE support for Flux, then worth checking out. Or worth waiting a little bit until it's more
certainly
accessible.
still has some rough edges, but it's come a long way. I can tell it was developed in secret. So I just wanted to mention it here because it's available for testing now.
Cool. I don't suppose you've got it there to do a screen share, Kingdon.
I do. You want to see it right now? Actually,
I think to just yeah, show file tree kind of view.
So this is the UI over here in the sidebar. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Has a view of multiple clusters. It pulls, I think, through the Kubernetes plugin. I haven't really looked at the source code, so I'm not sure how it works, but these are all of the Kubernetes clusters that I have in my kube config as contexts. And it has a list of sources and a separate list of workloads. And I've numbered my workloads here.
Workloads like deployments?
Yep. These are customizations, and underneath.
Oh, not deployments.
There are deployments in here, or secrets, or any kind of whatever it is. So for example,
workloads is kind of a funny name for that.
Yeah, it's maybe it is. So like for example, in apps, I've got services and deployments and image repositories and policies. So anything that's synced by the customization shows up here. And if you want to find details, it will, here it's logging me into my cluster through my OIDC. It will pull up the resource in its current state from the cluster, and you can find status details here. So it's still has some rough edges for sure. I think this is not what I really envisioned in a UI, but it does the job. You can get to the information really quickly without using the CLI. And I didn't set it up with something wrong. That would have been really smart of me if I knew I was going to present this, but
maybe you could edit something.
Yeah, let's make something wrong.
Let's break something.
Move fast.
You have to move fast when you're breaking things. It's important.
Exactly. That's the only way to do it. Yeah.
Let's make the Helm release wrong somehow. In a way that make it fail.
I was expecting you to do this in the IDE.
Oh yeah, you think you would? Yeah, I'm not really a VS Code user, so.
But I think this is pretty cool. Having seen this before, you can go from the, if I'm right, you can kind of go from the resource as it appears in the Flux view to the actual file. Is that right? Or am I extrapolating?
I have not found that feature if that exists.
Okay.
This is the workload view, and then this happens to be the repo. I just happen to have the same repo open, so. But there's no tracing between.
Oh, I thought there was, you could like get the Git repository and then clone that and then go and edit it, but maybe I'm wrong.
That would be really cool. I would like that.
If they haven't done that, they should.
Agreed. So this is what I'm looking for here. Let's just take something out. We need delete something and make it wrong. Okay. think it's saved. I have all the webhooks set up, so we should see things kicking into action really quickly. And that's a Helm release that I broke. It should be this one. I think I have to refresh here to see anything happen. Yep. So these are still working, I think. And then this one is stuck. Cool.
Okay. Yeah.
By the way, really nice on spot presentation.
Yeah, yeah, well done. Well ad-libbed.
So here's our error. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I try to keep a cluster on the ready for spot presentations.
Ha.
Being in DX and all seems like a core job requirement.
I just kind of whip a demo out of your pocket and unfold it. There it is.
Yeah, any questions before I close it down? Cool.
How many clusters do you have?
I've been using an AKS cluster and a GKE cluster together with my two home lab clusters. I have one that I tear down regularly and recreate, and another one that I try to treat more like a production instance and leave it on all the time.
Nice.
They're both using Metal LB. That's essential for your home lab cluster.
Never tried that.
Got to have some load balancers.
Okay.
Yeah, nicely done. Thanks a lot, Kingdom.
Credit goes to the people that actually made the UI extension. I've only taken it and demoed it for 10 seconds. So, but I'm impressed, and I like I'd like to spread this around and show more people.
Super. Yeah, we're at the end of our agenda. Does anyone have any last words, or maybe some other question, something where you needed help? I also just noticed that Sanskar came on. Did you quickly want to introduce yourself, or were you just listening in? Both is fine.
Yeah, sure. I didn't want to interrupt the demo, so I just thought I'll just stay here. Hey everyone, I'm Sanskar. I joined the Flux team like 2 days back. And yeah, I joined with Paulo. And yeah, it's been a hectic couple of days, but yeah, I mean, I'm getting used to the entire meetings and everything. And yeah, looking forward to working with you all as a team. Yeah.
Welcome. Yeah, great to have you. All right. I guess with that we can wrap up.
I have one thing to discuss, something very short. I have noticed that in all the most of the control repositories, we have GitHub action called e2e.yaml, and we do end-to-end tests of the controllers. And this is missing from image reflector and image automation. So I discovered that the refactored branches, they were using the new tooling, but when you try to run the actual controller, it failed. Like the main.go had some issue, which is not discovered when you run the end tests, because they just run the controller files, not the main.go file. So I was wondering if we should add this end-to-end test GitHub action to everything.
How did it actually fail, Sonny?
So the new tooling from the package repository, it has some new metrics collector handlers.
Okay.
So there was the old code and there's the new code. They were registering it twice and it's failing.
Yeah.
So even though all the tests pass, that fades.
I never put them in. I didn't put them in because the main.go was pretty close to the boilerplate that you get from KubeBuilder, and I didn't think it was worth it. But it has changed quite a bit since then, especially because of the new helpers. So I mean, even if it's just a test which runs the controller and makes sure it doesn't crash, I think it'd be worth. I don't think I would call it an end-to-end test, and I don't think I would call most of the tests that are run in e2e.yaml anywhere end-to-end tests. But a smoke test would be great. Yeah, very good idea.
So it can just deploy the controller and maybe create a CRD and delete it, just to check if it's good.
Exactly. Just have an example CRD, make sure it's created, make sure the controller reacts to it, I suppose, puts in a status or something like that. It doesn't really need to do any more than that because, well, unless it's going to go and check the metrics and check that events get sent maybe and stuff like that, because those are the things that aren't checked by the unit test. Like the sort of more rounded actual controller rather than just the the reconcile method. But I would start with a smoke test anyway.
Okay. Another observation was in the Helm controller repository, there are like more than 5 end-to-end tests. They are actually doing some unique tests, which runs the controller and applies some YAMLs and see if they work. And this process caught some issues that were not caught in the direct main controller tests. Although we know that the Helm controller is missing a lot of test cases. But I was wondering, these tests that we run through GitHub Actions, should we convert them in such a form you can run it locally easily? Right now, it's just in GitHub Actions, you have steps in a job and you just apply various YAMLs. It's hard to run them manually.
I think there's, so end-to-end or integration tests are often sort of there because there is something that's really difficult to test locally because it relies on something that's expensive or not available locally or whatever. And maybe the Helm controller that's the reason it has some tests end-to-end. But for things that don't have that property, we still do want tests of the the executable, as you were just talking about. And if there's no reason that they can't be run locally, then they should be runnable locally, and indeed should be part of make test.
I was wondering, like, how do you execute those codes? Like, should we have a test runner? Just apply through bash script?
Yeah, bash script or make target if it's that simple. But if it's, the make target might be shell out to /tests script /test script or something like that, I guess.
There's also a specific tool for running GitHub Actions locally. It works some of the time. I've tried it and it's okay. I'm not sure I would recommend it, but it might work for you.
I heard that it doesn't work a lot of the time, so I didn't try it.
Yeah, I think maybe in the case that there's no other way to do it, that might be useful. But if stuff can just be put in a script, then we can just put it in a script and refer to it from the GitHub Actions. There's too much stuff, in my opinion, that is in the GitHub Actions and not somewhere else. Because the way the build is run, for instance, for a lot of the controllers is in the GitHub action and not in the make file. So if you run the make file, you get a different thing than the GitHub action.
I had like a lot of trouble reproducing sometimes that are just failing in GitHub Actions. I had to do a lot of things manually. So that would be better if I can just run the script locally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that.
I agree.
Okay, that's it.
Cool.
Time up.
Thanks, Sunny.
Super. Thanks a lot, everyone. See you online, and yeah, we still have a meeting next week. Yeah. All right. See you next week then. Take care.
Cheers, everyone.